I bet that during the Silverstone Grand Prix, you didn't notice this really rare onboard angle, and the reason I'm making a video about it is because next season is going to be changing how we're going to watch the Formula 1 broadcast. Now, it was only for a few seconds, but on lap 36 during the safety car, we saw an onboard angle looking back at Max Verstappen while he was warming up the tyres. Now, for this shot to even be possible, the onboard camera was put onto the rear wing of the Mercedes safety car. However, there was one other car which was featuring a rear onboard angle over the race weekend, and that was on Lance Stroll's car during FP1, but unfortunately it didn't make the broadcast. However, this is a brand new type of onboard angle, so for this piece we're going to be using the screenshots from the Mercedes safety car as a reference to kind of see what you're going to look like. Now, a rear onboard angle isn't something new. It's been featuring in the championship for over 20 years, but this is one of the very first times we've seen that position being moved around and tested in different areas looking at the back. Now, the rear view onboard angle is usually coming from something called the T camera, where you have one view that goes out the front and on the other side of the T cam faces the rear. Now, the T cameras on top of a Formula 1 car are not only shooting out a video signal, but are also receiving data back from it. Looking on top of the T camera, we can actually see through the acrylic here of how the actual cameras are working. Now, on the right hand side, you have the lens, and just behind that, you have the image sensor. And just behind that, you have this small circuit board which translates that into a video signal. It's then processed into a signal which can be sent from these two antennas here, which can be sent to all of these sites around the circuit. And this is a two-way direction to send out video signals and all the key data all the teams are needing. But this is also a two-way connection, so then teams can not only just see the tire pressures or the gauges throughout the car, but are able to have an open dialogue with the driver over the radio system. So for this, they use a Wi-Fi based system to transfer data over 5 GHz, and for video, they're using 10 GHz, and they have 38 antennas all around the track, so then at any one moment, they never lose connection. But why is this new angle so important, and why should we really care about it? Well, it's actually giving us a new perspective on how close the racing can actually be. This means that the fans can now watch another driver getting super close in a slipstream before making a move. And this is the season when they're testing it out, and if it all goes well with their future tests, it means it's going to become standard for all 20 drivers in the 2024 season. Now, upon hearing that, you might be thinking that's quite a quick turnaround to have all 20 drivers having the same camera on the rear of their car, so how can that become standardized so quickly? Well, it's all due to the rear crash structure, which is absolutely standardized across all teams, and its positioning will just be underneath the rain lights in this small space, which I can only imagine that when they come into the pit stop and you see the rear jackman coming in and lifting up the car, I can imagine that's going to look quite cool too. Now, the reason for why the camera is positioned under the rain light is because if it's put on top, then it could be easily overheated by the rear exhaust. And after doing some testing, they found that underneath that rear light positioning, typically is around 85 degrees. And with these cameras, they've been tested to up to over 100 degrees, so there's no issue there of overheating. So when the camera is taken off, what does it actually look like? Well, it looks like this. And this is the same type of camera they use for the face shots, but also the same camera they used literally this time last year at Silverstone Grand Prix again for when they were testing out the pedal camera, which has now been successful and is now being used this season. Just that of a small pinhole lens with a box containing the image sensor behind, with this small little camera box just weighing 62 grams. Now, do bear in mind though that the actual angle that we saw is a slightly elevated version to what is going to be the final outcome. Remember, it was on the rear wing of the safety car, so it's just going to be slightly higher, but even from then the angle looks pretty cool. But why can't the teams actually test this during qualifying or during the race? And why is it that we only see this stuff during free practice sessions? Well, that's just down to the FIA regulations and the same sort of rules that teams have to abide by when they're using new front wings or new bodywork. Basically, it needs to be homologated first before it can actually be used in proper sessions. And you've got to remember, it's its first proper full speed test. There's so many external factors that could go wrong here. And obviously you don't want anything to go wrong with a car during qualifying or, God forbid, even the race. So after a few tests, it can get fully homologated and brought into the next season, which is exactly what we saw with the pedal camera. I'm really excited to see these new onboard angles being used, and we only get to see these type of angles being used when teams are doing their pre-season filming, and that's usually when they're just strapping on a GoPro and putting them into some crazy shots. And so if this does get approved and homologated, that means we might be able to see it all being standardized by next season. And I think we'll see it best during a racing environment, you know, someone going for an overtake, their nose coming right up close to the rear rain light. I think that would look pretty cool. And this type of angle we're already seeing in other championships, so for it to actually be tested out and now be working, it's just really exciting. But just before we end today's video, I want to thank today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark can digitally change your location to another, so if you're wanting to watch TV shows or films which are geo-blocked in your location, you can use this by changing it to wherever it is available to watch. So a good case in point, recently, me and my partner, we wanted to watch the film Up in the Air. Seen a lot of it on TikTok, thought go and watch it. Don't watch it, it's a really awful film. I stopped watching halfway through. But to access this, we had to change our location to France, where at the time it was available to watch on Netflix. So by changing our location with just a few clicks, we're then able to watch a pretty rubbish film. I really don't recommend it, honestly. But Surfshark VPN isn't just limited to folk like us here in the UK or for those over in France. It has over 3,000 servers across 95 countries. I mean, you can access even more geo-block programs and services in different territories. And if you use my promo code MattAmus, you'll get 3 extra months for free. So make sure to click the link down in the description below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.